Have you ever noticed something strange in relationships? The moment you stop chasing. The moment you finally pull your attention back. Suddenly, the woman who seemed distant begins to look your way again. She starts watching your stories. She sends a casual message. She appears curious about the very man she once seemed to ignore. For many men, this feels confusing. You gave your attention, your effort, your time, and it pushed her away. But the moment you stepped back and focused on your own life, she started coming closer. Why does this happen? Is it psychology? Is it attraction? Or is it something deeper about human nature? Today, we're going to explore a powerful truth most men learn the hard way, a truth rooted in Stoic wisdom, self-respect, and emotional strength. Because sometimes, the moment you stop chasing is the exact moment you become someone worth chasing. Welcome to the channel, Stoic Love Wisdom. This is where every story and lesson about love will help you find the answer. Today, we will explore a new perspective through the topic, why does stopping the pursuit make women come back to you? These are real-life experiences and profound lessons that will change the way you perceive love. Follow me, because the most surprising and interesting things are still waiting for you ahead. Before starting, find a quiet place, put on your headphones and relax your mind. Let the sharing in this video help you feel more fully and enjoy every meaningful moment. Are you ready to embark on this journey? Let's begin. Part 1, The Silent Power of Walking Away. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes something uncomfortable about love. Not all effort brings someone closer. Sometimes, the more you chase, the further she runs. I didn't learn this from books. I learned it from mistakes, from sleepless nights, from watching my own dignity slowly dissolve in the name of affection. And if there is one truth that experience has carved deeply into my mind, it is this. A man who cannot walk away will eventually be taken for granted. This is not bitterness. This is not manipulation. It is simply the quiet law of human nature. And the sooner a man understands this, the sooner his relationships begin to change. The first illusion men believe. When we are young, we believe love works like effort. You want something, you work harder for it. You send more messages. You plan better dates. You try to impress her more. You believe persistence proves devotion. And sometimes, at the beginning, it works. But something subtle begins to happen when a man invests too much while receiving too little. The balance disappears. And once balance disappears, attraction quietly begins to die. Women rarely say this out loud, but they feel it instinctively. When a man constantly chases, constantly proves, constantly seeks approval, something inside her mind begins to shift. She stops seeing him as a prize. She begins seeing him as someone afraid to lose her. And the moment that fear becomes visible, the dynamic changes. Attraction thrives on uncertainty. One of the hardest truths for men to accept is this. Attraction is not built on certainty. It is built on emotional tension. Think about the early stage of every relationship you have ever experienced. The curiosity. The anticipation. The wondering. Does she like me? Will she text back? Will we see each other again? This tension creates energy. But when a man becomes too available, too eager, too predictable, that tension disappears. And when the tension disappears, the mystery fades. This is why constant chasing rarely creates desire. It creates comfort. And comfort without respect eventually turns into boredom. The Stoic perspective on desire. The ancient Stoics understood something about human behavior long before modern psychology tried to explain it. They believed that attachment to outcomes weakens a man. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But most men do the opposite in love. They give their emotional stability to someone else. If she replies quickly, they feel happy. If she pulls away, they feel anxious. If she seems distant, they panic and try harder. In doing so, they slowly lose the one quality that creates deep attraction: self-possession. A Stoic man does not beg for attention. He does not chase validation. And most importantly, he does not abandon his own life to pursue someone else's approval. When a man stops chasing, something interesting happens the moment a man truly stops chasing. Not pretending to stop. Not playing games. But genuinely returning his focus to his own life. His work. His goals. His growth. The emotional pressure disappears. The energy shifts. And suddenly, the woman who once seemed distant begins to notice something different. She notices the silence. And silence, when it comes from strength, is incredibly powerful. Because silence forces the other person to confront uncertainty again. And uncertainty awakens curiosity. The psychology behind it. Human beings are wired to value what feels scarce. This is not manipulation. This is simple psychology. When something is always available, we unconsciously assign it less value. But when access becomes uncertain, our attention increases. This is why people suddenly become interested in something the moment they believe they might lose it. In relationships, the same principle quietly operates beneath the surface. When a man constantly pursues, he communicates something unintentionally. I need this connection more than you do. But when he calmly withdraws and refocuses on his own path, he communicates something entirely different. My life continues with or without you. And paradoxically, that independence often becomes magnetic. The difference between strategy and truth. Now let me be clear about something important. This is not about pretending to ignore someone in order to trigger their interest. Women are incredibly perceptive. They can sense manipulation from miles away. If a man stops chasing as a tactic, the energy still feels needy. But when a man stops chasing because he has rediscovered his self-respect, that energy feels different. It feels calm, grounded, unbothered. And those qualities create a kind of quiet gravity that draws people closer. What women actually respond to. Despite what many men believe, women are rarely attracted to effort alone. They are attracted to emotional stability. They are drawn to men who seem comfortable within themselves. Men who do not panic when things become uncertain. Men who do not collapse when attention temporarily disappears. Because deep down, every woman asks herself a subconscious question. Is this man strong enough to lead his own life? A man who constantly chases is unconsciously answering, I need you to feel complete. But a man who walks his own path is answering something far more attractive. I enjoy your presence, but my world does not revolve around you. And that difference changes everything. The quiet test every woman gives. Most women will never openly say this, but they often test a man's emotional strength. Not through cruelty, but through instinct. They pull back slightly. They delay responses. They create small moments of distance. And they watch. Not to punish him, but to see how he reacts. If he panics and chases harder, the attraction slowly fades. But if he remains calm, continues living his life, and does not beg for reassurance, something surprising happens. Respect grows. And with respect, attraction returns. Walking away is not losing. Many men fear that if they stop pursuing, they will lose the woman entirely. But here is the paradox. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to see whether someone truly values your presence. Because when you remove your constant attention, the illusion disappears. Either she reaches out again, or she does not. And both outcomes reveal the truth. A Stoic man understands this. He does not cling to what refuses to stay. And he does not chase what willingly walks away. Because he knows something most men take years to understand. Attention given freely has value. But attention given endlessly loses meaning. The beginning of real power. When a man learns to stop chasing, he does not become cold. He does not become indifferent. Instead, he becomes something far more attractive. He becomes centered. His attention becomes intentional. His presence becomes rare. And rarity creates value. This is the quiet power that many men discover only after years of frustration. Not through manipulation. Not through games. But through a simple shift in mindset. Stop trying to convince someone to stay. And start becoming the kind of man whose absence is felt. Have you ever realized that, in love, moments of silence are sometimes more powerful than 1,000 words? Because in silence, we can hear our heartbeat more clearly and feel the presence of the other person more deeply. Here, I want to explore with you that strength, peace, and stability even when love goes through challenges. If you feel that these shares bring you something positive, please click like to support. And if you haven't clicked subscribe, do it now, so you don't miss any insight into love and maturity. I also hope to hear your story. What is the most valuable lesson that love has taught you? Please share in the comments section so we can learn and be inspired together. Come on, let's move on to the next part with a more prepared mind. Part 2, Why Absence Awakens Her Curiosity. If you have lived long enough as a man, you begin to notice a strange pattern in relationships. When you give someone all of your attention, they slowly grow used to it. But the moment that attention disappears, something inside them begins to wake up. Suddenly, the woman who once seemed distant starts watching you again. She checks your messages. She notices your silence. She begins to wonder what changed. And that question, what changed, is where curiosity begins. Human nature and the fear of loss. There is a powerful force that drives human behavior. It is stronger than logic. Stronger than comfort. It is the fear of losing something valuable. Psychologists call this loss aversion. People react far more strongly to the possibility of losing something than they do to gaining something new. In relationships, this truth reveals itself in subtle ways. When a man is always present, always available, always reaching out, the woman's mind becomes comfortable with the idea that he will always be there. His attention becomes predictable. Expected. But when that attention quietly disappears, something changes. Her mind begins to ask questions it never asked before. Why hasn't he texted? Did he lose interest? Is he seeing someone else? And suddenly, the emotional certainty she once felt begins to dissolve. That uncertainty creates tension. And tension creates attention. The power of emotional contrast. Another truth most men overlook is the power of contrast. The human mind only notices change. If something stays the same for too long, we stop paying attention to it. Think about a sound in the background that disappears. You never noticed it until it stopped. Your attention is triggered by the difference. The same thing happens in relationships. If a man always behaves the same way, always chasing, always texting first, always initiating contact, his behavior becomes invisible. It fades into the background of her emotional experience. But when that pattern suddenly breaks, her attention returns immediately. She begins to feel the difference. And that difference creates curiosity. Curiosity is the beginning of attraction. Many men believe attraction begins with physical appearance. But in reality, attraction often begins with curiosity. Curiosity is emotional energy. It pulls someone's attention toward you. And attention is the first ingredient of desire. When a woman begins to wonder about you again, your presence in her mind grows stronger. Not because you are trying harder, but because you stop trying to force the outcome. And paradoxically, that is when interest often begins to rebuild. The Stoic man understands timing. A Stoic man does not rush emotional processes. He understands something important. Attraction cannot be forced. You cannot argue someone into wanting you. You cannot convince someone to feel desire. Trying to force attraction is like trying to force a flower to bloom by pulling its petals. You only destroy it. Instead, the Stoic man focuses on controlling the only thing that belongs to him. His behavior. His time. His energy. And when he senses that his effort is no longer appreciated, he simply redirects that energy back into his own life. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with calm acceptance. Silence speaks louder than words. One of the most powerful signals a man can send is silence. Not the silence of resentment, but the silence of self-respect. When a man stops chasing, he is communicating something without saying a single word. He is saying, "My attention is valuable. My time is not unlimited. My life continues forward." These signals are subtle, but women feel them deeply. Because emotional strength is often communicated through restraint, not effort. A man who can walk away peacefully demonstrates a kind of stability that many people find deeply attractive. The mystery returns. In the early stages of attraction, mystery plays a powerful role. People are drawn to what they do not fully understand. But constant chasing destroys mystery. When someone always knows exactly where you are emotionally, exactly how you feel, and exactly how much you want them, the unknown disappears. And with it, much of the intrigue. But when a man stops chasing and returns to his own life, mystery slowly returns. She begins to wonder what he is doing, who he is meeting, what changed inside him. And the moment curiosity returns, emotional attention follows. When she starts watching again, many men are surprised by what happens next. Days pass. Maybe weeks. And suddenly, the woman who once seemed distant begins to reappear. She likes your story. She sends a casual message. She reacts to something you posted. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes it is direct. But the pattern is common. Because when someone senses they may have lost access to your attention, they begin to check whether that door is still open. Not always because they are deeply in love, but because humans are naturally curious about things they might be losing. The mistake men make at this moment. This is where many men sabotage themselves. The moment she reaches out again, they fall back into the same pattern. They become overly eager. They respond instantly. They return to chasing. And in doing so, they remove the very dynamic that brought her curiosity back. The Stoic man does something different. He remains calm. He responds naturally. But he does not abandon his life to revolve around her again. He continues moving forward. Because he understands something many men never learn. Respect must exist before attraction can survive. And respect grows when a man demonstrates that he values his own time, energy, and emotional balance. The real lesson behind her return. Now here is an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes a woman comes back not because she suddenly realized you were perfect, but because your absence reminded her that you were valuable. And value is often invisible until it disappears. This is why a man must never beg someone to appreciate him. Appreciation that is forced is never genuine. True appreciation appears naturally when someone recognizes that your presence is not guaranteed. The Stoic mindset. A Stoic man does not stop chasing in order to manipulate outcomes. He stops chasing because he understands his worth. He understands that affection given freely is beautiful. But affection demanded endlessly becomes exhausting. So he chooses a different path. He gives attention where it is reciprocated. He invests where there is mutual energy. And where there is indifference. He walks away with quiet dignity. Because he knows something powerful. The right people do not need to be chased. They choose to walk beside you. Part 3, The Man Who Is Not Afraid to Lose Her. There is a quiet truth about attraction that many men spend years trying to understand. Women are not most drawn to the man who wants them the most. They are drawn to the man who can live without them. At first, this sounds cold. But it is not about indifference. It is about emotional independence. Because nothing changes the dynamic between a man and a woman faster than this realization. He does not need me to feel complete. And strangely enough, that realization often makes a woman want him even more. Neediness is the silent attraction killer. Let me tell you something that most men do not notice about themselves. When a man becomes emotionally attached too quickly, his behavior begins to change. He checks his phone more often. He analyzes every message. He worries about saying the wrong thing. He begins adjusting his actions to avoid losing her. At first, this may seem like care. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. Fear. Fear of losing her attention. Fear of losing the connection. Fear of being replaced. And fear always leaks through behavior. You cannot hide it forever. It appears in the way you text. The way you wait. The way you over-explain. And women are incredibly sensitive to these signals. Not because they are trying to judge you. But because emotional awareness is deeply wired into their instincts. When a woman senses that a man is afraid to lose her, something inside her mind relaxes. Not in a good way. In the sense that she no longer feels challenged. The dynamic shifts. And once that shift happens, attraction slowly begins to weaken. The man who can walk away. Now imagine the opposite. A man who enjoys a woman's presence but does not depend on it. He has his own mission. His own goals. His own life moving forward. If she stays, wonderful. If she leaves, his world does not collapse. This type of emotional stability creates a completely different energy. He is relaxed. He does not rush. He does not beg for reassurance. And most importantly, he does not sacrifice his dignity just to keep someone around. This calm independence is incredibly powerful. Because it signals something rare in modern relationships. Inner strength. The Stoic philosophy of detachment. The Stoics spoke often about the importance of emotional discipline. They believed that suffering often comes from attachment to things we cannot control. Other people's feelings. Other people's choices. Other people's decisions. In relationships, this lesson becomes essential. You cannot control whether someone chooses to stay. You cannot control whether someone chooses to love you. Trying to control those things only leads to anxiety. But you can control something else. Your character. Your actions. Your self-respect. And when a man builds his identity around those things instead of someone else's approval, he becomes incredibly difficult to shake emotionally. That stability is attractive. Not because it is mysterious. But because it is rare. Why confidence is magnetic. Confidence is not loud. It is not arrogance. True confidence is quiet. It is the calm understanding that your value does not depend on anyone else's opinion. When a man truly believes this, his behavior changes naturally. He stops chasing validation. He stops over-investing in uncertain connections. He stops trying to convince people to see his worth. Instead, he simply lives his life. And the right people are naturally drawn into that energy. Women, especially, notice this difference. Because many men operate from a place of emotional scarcity. They are afraid of losing attention. Afraid of losing affection. Afraid of being alone. But the man who is comfortable standing alone radiates something very different. Security. Emotional strength creates safety. Here is something many men misunderstand. Women are not only attracted to excitement. They are also deeply drawn to emotional safety. But emotional safety does not mean constant reassurance. It means stability. A man who does not collapse under pressure. A man who does not become jealous over every small thing. A man who does not react emotionally to every fluctuation in attention. This type of stability signals something powerful. It suggests that he can handle life. That he can handle challenges. That he can remain grounded when things become uncertain. And that kind of emotional strength is incredibly appealing. The paradox of detachment. There is a strange paradox in human relationships. The more tightly you try to hold on to something, the more likely it is to slip away. But when you loosen your grip, things often return naturally. This does not mean you stop caring. It simply means you stop forcing outcomes. A Stoic man understands this balance. He appreciates people deeply. But he does not cling to them. He enjoys connection. But he does not lose himself inside it. And because he maintains that balance, his presence feels calm rather than overwhelming. When a woman feels she might lose you. Something interesting happens when a woman senses that a man is no longer afraid to lose her. The emotional dynamic flips. Suddenly, she begins to wonder something she may have never considered before. What if I lose him? This shift creates tension. And tension reignites attraction. She begins paying closer attention. She becomes more invested in the interaction. Not because the man is manipulating her. But because his independence signals that he has options. And options create perceived value. The difference between love and dependency. Many men confuse love with dependency. They believe that loving someone means needing them. But healthy attraction rarely grows from dependency. It grows from two people who are complete individuals choosing to share their lives. Not two people clinging to each other out of fear. A man who builds his happiness entirely around a woman unintentionally places enormous pressure on the relationship. But a man who already has purpose, direction, and self-respect brings something much healthier. Presence without pressure. Interest without desperation. Connection without control. And that balance keeps attraction alive far longer than constant pursuit ever could. Why women often return. When a woman sees that a man is emotionally stable enough to walk away, something shifts in her perception. She begins to see him differently. Not as someone trying to win her approval. But as someone who already values himself. And self-respect is incredibly attractive. Because it signals boundaries. Standards. And strength. These qualities make a man stand out in a world where many people chase validation endlessly. The quiet power of self-respect. In the end, stopping the chase is not about playing games. It is about rediscovering something many men lose in relationships. Self-respect. When a man remembers his worth, he stops trying to prove himself constantly. He stops seeking approval from someone who is uncertain. And he begins investing his time in people who genuinely appreciate his presence. Ironically, this is often the exact moment when the woman who once pulled away begins to move closer again. Because the man she sees now is different. Stronger. Calmer. More grounded. And far more difficult to replace. In love, sometimes silence is the answer. It gives us time to listen to ourselves and understand the other person's heart better. That's also the reason I share stories on this channel, so that you have a pause, a peaceful space to reflect. If you find this meaningful, please click like and don't forget to subscribe, so that we can continue to accompany each other on the journey to find a peaceful and profound love. Now, let's continue the rest with me. Part 4, The Power of Scarcity, Why Your Attention Becomes Valuable When It Is Not Always Available. There is a principle that quietly governs nearly everything people desire in life. The rarer something is, the more valuable it becomes. Gold is valuable because it is scarce. Diamonds are valuable because they are limited. Time is valuable because it cannot be replaced. And strangely enough, the same principle applies to human attention. When something is always available, people stop appreciating it. But when access becomes limited, its value suddenly increases. This is not manipulation. This is simply human psychology. And many men unknowingly destroy their own value by giving their attention away too freely. The man who is always available. Imagine a man who responds instantly every time. He is always the first to text. Always the one planning. Always the one checking in. At first, this might feel flattering to a woman. But over time, something subtle happens. His attention becomes predictable. Guaranteed. Expected. And when something becomes expected, it loses its emotional impact. It becomes routine. The excitement fades. Not because the man is not a good person, but because the dynamic no longer contains any emotional tension. Everything becomes too certain. Why scarcity creates desire. Human beings are wired to notice what might disappear. If something feels unlimited, the brain stops prioritizing it. But when something feels limited, the brain immediately pays attention. This is why limited opportunities often feel more exciting. Why rare experiences feel more meaningful. And why a man who does not constantly give his attention away often appears more attractive. Because his attention feels valuable. It feels earned. It feels intentional. The Stoic man protects his time. A Stoic man understands something that many people overlook. Time is the most valuable resource he possesses. It cannot be bought. It cannot be replaced. And once it is gone, it never returns. Because of this, he becomes careful about where he invests it. He does not give endless hours to someone who is unsure about him. He does not constantly rearrange his life to chase someone's attention. Instead, he protects his focus. He invests his time in growth, purpose, meaningful relationships. And when he chooses to give his attention to someone, it carries weight. Because it is not something he offers to everyone. The emotional impact of limited attention. When a woman realizes that a man's attention is not unlimited, something shifts in her perception. Instead of assuming his presence will always be there, she begins to value the moments she shares with him. Conversations feel more meaningful. Time together feels more intentional. Because she knows that his attention is not something she can take for granted. This subtle shift creates respect. And respect strengthens attraction. The difference between coldness and selectivity. Now it is important to understand something. Scarcity does not mean emotional distance. A man does not become attractive by being cold or dismissive. That is not strength. That is immaturity. The Stoic approach is different. It is not about withholding kindness. It is about being selective with energy. A Stoic man can be warm, attentive, and engaged. But he does not abandon his priorities in order to chase someone's validation. He remains balanced, grounded, focused. And that balance is incredibly attractive. Why constant chasing creates emotional imbalance. When one person invests far more energy than the other, the relationship becomes unbalanced. One person begins to lead. the other begins to follow. An attraction rarely survives when one person feels emotionally dependent. If a man constantly chases, he places himself in a position of lower value within the dynamic. Not because he lacks worth, but because his behavior communicates that he is trying to gain approval. But when he becomes selective with his attention, the balance begins to correct itself. Both people must invest. Both people must show interest. And mutual effort is where healthy attraction grows. The return of intrigue. When a man is not constantly available, a natural sense of intrigue returns. The woman begins to wonder what occupies his time. What drives him? What his priorities are. This curiosity adds depth to the connection. Because attraction often thrives on the unknown. The moment everything becomes predictable, emotional excitement fades. But when a man maintains his independence, that intrigue remains alive. And intrigue keeps attraction breathing. The mistake of overgiving. Many men believe that giving more will make someone appreciate them more. More attention. More effort. More availability. But appreciation rarely grows from excess. It grows from balance. When someone receives something constantly, they eventually stop noticing it. But when something appears intentionally and meaningfully, its impact becomes stronger. A Stoic man understands this instinctively. He gives fully when he gives. But he does not give endlessly. Value is created through boundaries. Another lesson many men learn too late is the importance of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are standards. They communicate what you accept and what you do not. A man with no boundaries often ends up sacrificing his time, energy, and dignity to keep someone interested. But a man with strong boundaries quietly communicates something powerful. That his life has structure, purpose, direction. And people naturally respect those qualities. Because boundaries signal self-respect. And self-respect increases perceived value. When she begins to value your presence again. As your attention becomes less constant and more intentional, something interesting begins to happen. The woman who once felt comfortable with unlimited access to you begins to notice your presence differently. Your messages feel more meaningful. Your time together feels more special. Your attention feels earned rather than guaranteed. And that shift often reignites something that had slowly faded. Interest. Curiosity. Desire. Not because you forced it. But because you stopped overextending yourself. The Stoic lesson about attention. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a simple but powerful idea. Direct your energy toward what truly matters. Your growth. Your purpose. Your character. Your peace of mind. When a man lives according to these principles, his life naturally becomes full. He is not waiting for someone's attention to feel complete. He is already moving forward. And because of that, the attention he gives to others becomes meaningful rather than desperate. The man who values himself. In the end, the reason stopping the chase can change everything is simple. When a man begins to value his own time, others begin to value it too. When he protects his energy, others respect it. And when he stops giving his attention endlessly, his presence becomes rare enough to matter. Scarcity does not create attraction by itself. But it reminds people of something they may have forgotten. Your presence is not guaranteed. And sometimes, that realization is exactly what makes someone turn around and come back. Part 5, The Final Stoic Truth, Becoming the Man Who No Longer Needs Her to Return. By now, you may have noticed something interesting about everything we have discussed. None of it is truly about making a woman come back. Not really. Because the deeper lesson behind stopping the chase is not a strategy. It is a transformation. It is the moment a man realizes that his peace, his purpose, and his self-respect must never depend entirely on another person's presence. And once that realization truly settles inside him, something powerful begins to change. He stops chasing love and begins attracting it. The dangerous trap of emotional dependency. Many men enter relationships with a hidden belief. They believe that finding the right woman will complete their lives. That her attention will fill the empty spaces. That her presence will finally give them the happiness they have been searching for. But this mindset carries a dangerous consequence. When your happiness depends on someone else's presence, you begin to fear losing them. And fear changes behavior. You become overly accommodating. You avoid conflict. You sacrifice your standards. You begin to shape yourself around their approval. And slowly, almost invisibly, you stop being yourself. This is how many men lose their sense of identity inside relationships. Not because they loved too deeply, but because they forgot to love themselves first. The Stoic man builds his life first. A Stoic man approaches life differently. He does not see a relationship as the center of his world. He sees it as a beautiful addition to an already meaningful life. His foundation is built elsewhere. In his purpose. In his discipline. In his character. In the direction he has chosen for his life. Because of this, he does not depend on relationships to feel fulfilled. He welcomes them. He appreciates them. But he does not lose himself inside them. This difference changes everything. Why self-respect is the real attraction. People often talk about confidence as if it were some mysterious quality. But confidence is simply the natural result of self-respect. When a man respects himself, he behaves differently. He does not tolerate disrespect. He does not beg for attention. He does not remain where he is clearly undervalued. And because of this, his presence carries a different energy. Calm. Grounded. Certain. Women notice this immediately. Not because he is trying to impress them, but because his behavior reflects inner stability. And stability is incredibly attractive. The quiet power of walking forward. There is something powerful about a man who continues moving forward with his life. Not waiting. Not chasing. Not obsessing. Just moving forward. He focuses on his work. His health. His growth. His friendships. His goals. His life becomes full. And when a man's life becomes full, he naturally stops clinging to uncertain connections. Because he understands something important. His time is too valuable to waste on someone who is unsure about him. When she comes back. Now here is the irony that many men eventually experience. Once a man truly reaches this mindset, something unexpected often happens. The woman who once seemed distant begins to return. Sometimes slowly. Sometimes suddenly. A message appears. A casual conversation begins. She starts showing curiosity again. But by this point, something inside the man has already changed. He is no longer waiting. He is no longer hoping. He is simply living. And that difference shifts the entire dynamic. The man who is no longer chasing. When a woman reconnects with a man who has truly moved forward, she often senses something different about him. He is calmer. Less reactive. More grounded. He no longer seeks constant validation. He does not rush emotional processes. He does not cling. Instead, he interacts with a quiet confidence that comes from having rebuilt his center. And that energy can feel incredibly attractive. Because she is no longer dealing with the same man she once walked away from. She is encountering someone stronger. Someone who has grown. Someone who is no longer afraid of losing her. The true test of growth. But this moment carries an important test. When someone returns, many men immediately fall back into old patterns. They forget everything they learned. They chase again. They overinvest again. They place the relationship back at the center of their lives. And eventually, the same cycle repeats. The Stoic man does something different. He remains balanced. He appreciates the connection. But he maintains his boundaries. He maintains his priorities. He maintains the life he built during the time he spent focusing on himself. Because he understands something deeply now. No relationship should cost him his identity. Love without losing yourself. The healthiest relationships are not built on dependency. They are built on mutual respect between two individuals who already have direction in their lives. Two people who choose each other. Not because they cannot survive alone. But because life feels richer together. A Stoic man understands this balance. He is capable of deep love. But he never abandons his purpose to maintain it. He shares his life. He does not surrender it. And this balance creates relationships that are far healthier and more stable. The final lesson. So if you remember only one thing from everything we have discussed, let it be this. Stopping the chase is not about making someone miss you. It is about remembering who you are. It is about reclaiming your time, your focus, and your self-respect. Because the moment a man stops chasing validation, something powerful happens. He begins living with intention. He begins building a life that does not revolve around someone else's approval. And that kind of life naturally attracts people who appreciate his presence. In the end, some women will return. Some will not. And strangely enough, once you truly understand these lessons, that outcome no longer controls your peace. Because the real victory was never about making someone come back. The real victory was becoming the kind of man who is complete with or without them. A man who walks his path with quiet strength. A man who gives his attention intentionally. A man who loves deeply but never abandons himself. And that man is the one people eventually realize was worth keeping all along. Conclusion. In the end, the greatest lesson about love is not about learning how to make someone stay. It is about learning how not to lose yourself while loving someone. Many men spend years believing that if they try harder, give more, and chase longer, they will eventually earn a woman's love. But life has a way of teaching a different truth. Attraction rarely grows from desperation. It grows from strength, balance, and self-respect. When a man constantly chases, he unknowingly places his happiness in someone else's hands. His attention becomes predictable, his presence becomes taken for granted, and slowly the dynamic of the relationship begins to weaken. But the moment a man steps back and returns to his own path, something changes. Not because he is playing games, but because he remembers his value. A man who focuses on his purpose, protects his time, and respects his own life creates a different kind of energy. His attention becomes intentional. His presence becomes meaningful. And suddenly, people begin to see him differently. Sometimes, the woman who once walked away notices this change and returns. Sometimes she does not. But by that point, it no longer matters in the same way. Because the true goal was never to make someone come back. The true goal was to become a man who stands firmly in his own life, a man who can love deeply without losing his direction. And when a man reaches that place of quiet confidence, something remarkable happens. He no longer chases attention. He attracts it. Not through manipulation, but through the rare and powerful quality that many people spend their entire lives searching for. A man who knows his worth and walks forward with calm, unshakable dignity. Thank you for watching today's video. I'm so happy to share my lessons about love and relationships with you. I hope you learned something new and can apply it to your life. If you find the video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for always accompanying and supporting me. Wish you a good day and don't forget to love yourself a lot.